This is Radical Love Live, an ongoing series of podcasts and special events where we explore faith outside the boxes. Hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson. Hey, Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
I'm freaking awesome as always.
Awesome. Well, what are we going to talk about today?
So, the last episode we did was on deconstruction.
That's right. We broke it all down.
We sure did. There's a song like that, who was it that did a song about breaking it down? Was that Phil Collins?
I don't know. I was thinking of all right, now the breakdown.
Oh, there's that. Okay. Oh, sorry, guys. Welcome to another episode of Radical Love Live. If you know anything about me, I like shiny objects. I'm like a cat with a laser. I'm just all over the place. So to answer Kelly's question, what are we going to talk about? Well, it's the other side of deconstruction, and that would be reconstruction. So in the context of one's faith. So if you listened to our last episode, or if you didn't, maybe you should, we got into what it means to deconstruct one's personal faith. And that is a positive experience, although it can be lonely. It's very frustrating. It makes you question lots of things when somebody deconstructs, but at the end of the day, the process is worth it because you find yourself in that and your own divinity, and a faith that works for you, and you can connect with, and it's a very organic experience. So we do encourage it. But then what do you do after you've deconstructed? There's the other part, because like anything else, you've got to start putting the pieces back together that in that framework that does work. So that's what we're going to talk about today, Kelly.
Excellent. So once we're in the rubble of our deconstruction, or the bare scaffolding, or the bare structure, what do we do from there?
Yeah.
What did you do from there when you were?
Thanks for asking, Kelly. So I think that's maybe a good place to start off. So, so as I've shared before, my deconstruction began with my sobriety, because I was forced to examine my life in toto. And because of the trauma that I experienced because of religion from years earlier that affected and impacted me, that led me to do things, and then the substance abuse and blah, 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 I had to take a good hard look at what religion meant to me. And so the deconstruction for me is not so much an absolute, but is both and to my reconstruction, because I'm still deconstructing. But somewhere, and it happened early on in the deconstruction process, and I shared in the last episode in particular, early on, I'm not even sure if I was even sober yet at that point, but I came to the realization that as a human in this experience, I would have no way of ever knowing what God is. It's impossible for me, and I think about anybody else, to actually know that. You could be a guru, you could be a mystic, you could be all kinds of things, but the notion of what would be the creative energy within the universe here and try to define it is just something that's not possible for me. So in that realization, so that's why the deconstruction and then the reconstruction started, because I already knew then, I guess I had my journey set out for me to break it down and then look for those things where it now made sense to me and how it, started to resonate and what I sensed, as opposed to what I was intellectually processing, because that's also, I do believe, a part of the reconstruction process is you just have to lean in on your own intuition and what feels right. So that's kind of it. Now we're going to talk a lot more about that reconstruction, and I think you're going to share on that as well. And so, you tell me what you think reconstruction is all about.
Well, for me, it started from kind of finding kind of using some of the other language of sobriety. It started from coming from kind of a rock bottom.
Yeah, right.
Is that I was writing this piece about faith and picking it apart and trying to get to the bottom of things. And I came at it from kind of intellectual construct of the fact that I'm always going to believe something. I'm not going to go so far as some people do, which is to say everybody believes something. It's just not, we all have assumptions about the universe and how it started and where it came from. It's just not all of it involves God. But if you think about those things, you have some assumptions. I know that that's true for me, and that that even things that aren't exactly certain beliefs still like act like belief. Meaning, like, if I'm afraid of something, then my body responds like that's real. Like if I'm in an airplane and I hit turbulence,
Sure.
I intellectually know that the plane isn't falling. My body doesn't.
That is very true, and I think this is a good analogy to this. Okay,
So,
keep going. Yep.
So fear is one of those things that I'm going to have. There's also going to be things that I have hope for. And hoping for something can also sort of make yourself believe that, or believe that that's possible. If I'm working towards, promotion at work, I believe that that promotion is possible, whether it is or not. I'm working towards it. And then there's the third element of that is love, is that if I love something, and it could be, like I love money, or I love gambling, or I love but I looked at all these and I saw, like, I'm not going to be able to strip these away to come down to like tabula rasa and then examine every other fact in the universe to then build a whole cosmology again. I'm going to start from somewhere. I'm starting from somewhere that's all my fears, my hopes, my loves that I've built up over all this time, and I just have to admit that that's where I am. So that's where I was. I'm trying to intellectually, break everything down so that I can be completely objective and look at the universe. And I'm like, you know what? That's not going to happen.
That's right.
So I
that's
finally
being
just
real.
like let all my guard down and just said, this is where I am. And I realized in that moment that I did have faith. And that I had faith in God, that I had faith in Jesus, that I felt like I had a relationship with Jesus. And from there, I was like, okay, now where do I go? Now that I've established this kind of like basis foundation,
Like you said, the tabula rasa.
yeah, this is where I'm now going to start moving forward and try to learn more things. And in the meantime, I'll do the best I can with, it's the whole, like, do the best you can with what you got, but keep an open mind to something new. So I said, okay, I'm establishing, this is what I believe. I'm going to continue in this belief, and I'm going to explore. I'm going to start talking to people. I'm going to start learning more about other religions and other ways of doing things. And that's when I started kind of rebuilding or reconstructing after years of deconstructing.
Yeah, so I asked you on the earlier episode, how many years did you think? You said, somewhere upward of 15 years you've been in a deconstruction mode. I'll let you answer this. I'm not going to lead it, but was your reconstruction taking place in that 15 years?
Well, I think that this moment that I'm talking about, and because I was working on a writing piece, I can pull up I can tell you what day it was.
Oh, wow.
I can tell you what time it was. That I consider that the end of my deconstruction.
Oh, wow. Okay. Got it. So you actually can put a pin in that one.
Right. And honestly, if I go back, because I've got some like bins of old journals at home, I might be able to find the beginning of it too.
Wow.
Which is kind of creepy having the.
Oh, why's that? No, I'm glad you kept your journals. I think I still have mine because, if anything else, sometime in the future, I'll look back and go, oh my God, I wrote some pretty crazy stuff, man.
Yeah. What what helps me is that when I start getting wistful about the good old days, and I look back and I'm like, no, I was just as freaking depressed then as I am now. Maybe more so, probably more so.
Well, that's okay. So there's some truth to that as well.
That reminds me, I missed my pill.
I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's a good one. Listeners, I hope you will don't mind me going down for a quick moment, because I do a lot of reading about things of faith, and but the stuff I read is from an outside perspective. People like me who are in wilderness by design. It's what I call it. It's not accidental. We're there for a reason. And this one book I'm currently reading, her point was in this section I was reading was that we as humans need some kind of faith structure anyway. That without it, our experience in this form is going to be less than. Now, I know there's some atheists who say that's not true, but I can speak from my own experience that when I was an angry atheist, I was not this person that I am today. So, when Kelly mentions like fear, hope, and love, I was driven by fear and not so much hope and so much love, because, I was like, well, people who believe in God and anything else like that, they're just stupid, ignorant, dumb people that they're just bleh. And I'm not going to be that, and I'm going to be superior, and I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to be intellectual about all this. But yet I was just not a happy camper. The fact remains that I was also, a raging alcoholic at that time, but just all the other stuff. But, I can't help but leave, though, that the fact that I believed in nothing, and also it was really bad atheism as well, as I've come to learn in this deconstruction, reconstruction process, that yes, indeed, I am a much happier, well-balanced, healthy, productive, I dare say that, human in this existence because of my faith than what I ever would be without a faith. Just saying.
What's interesting about that is that I had to come to terms with people who didn't have faith. And that was actually part of what started my deconstruction, is that I found myself sympathizing with people who didn't have faith. Like, people would tell me the arguments that they had against the Christian faith, and I'd be like, yeah, you're right. That does sound pretty dumb. Yeah. Like, if that's what it is about, then that does sound pretty dumb. Yeah. And then there's some parts of it that are simply, even now I follow a number of people who are agnostic or atheist online who, make arguments about if God is all good and all knowing and all powerful, then why does God allow evil to happen? It's
the old binary either or situation.
Yeah, theodicy. Yep. Is the technical term for that.
Is it what? What is it?
Theodicy. Ooh. Which is like the study of how, the relationship between God and allowing evil and why. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so kids, I think we've learned a new word. So say it one more time. Theodicy.
Theodicy.
Spell that for us.
It is THEODICY.
Oh my goodness. Theodicy.
And this dictionary, the Oxford Languages Dictionary, defines it as the vindication of divine goodness and providence in view of the existence of evil.
Ooh. All right.
But I say all that to say what it has done is it's made me rethink God and say, well, maybe there's something different about God. Maybe God for some reason can't intervene, or has created a universe where God can't intervene but can be close to us and feel our pain with us. Or maybe God, there's the old argument of like, well, God allowed free will, and then that allowed for the existence of evil. And that we could do a whole other episode on that.
I'm thinking we might need to, actually. You have me fascinated by this concept.
That I'm open to hearing those arguments and having them sharpen my faith, but I had to come to terms with it, because there was a point where I was like, how do you live without God? How do you be good or bad? How do you explain how the earth came into existence? And then, an old philosopher like Bertrand Russell comes along and says, well, if Earth had to have a creator, then didn't God have to have a creator? Like, is it creators all the way back? Like, who made God? You're just moving the problem one step back.
That is very true. That is very true.
And I think it's important to consider these problems, but also to not let them shut down our experiences. Like if you have experiences of the divine, one could say, well, intellectually, I can't believe in this because, Bertrand Russell made an argument that I shouldn't. I would say, well, maybe it's a yes and. Maybe you can have these philosophical questions and acknowledge your experiences of the mystical and let it be mystery.
Okay, so you've used a very important word there, mystery. Mystical is a part of that. And so as I share openly and gladly, I call myself a mystic, and I don't do that because I have some superpower. No, I've just done a lot of researching and digging and reflection and writing and all of that. That's a part of the deconstruction, reconstruction process to get to where I am today. Mystery and mystical. I'm really comfortable in that space, but unfortunately, I don't think a lot of folks don't see it that way, right? Because a mystic is somebody that doesn't get concerned about answers for everything. Mm-hmm. It's just simply like, yeah, I'm not going to know, right?
Right.
But in that unknowing, this is where one is allowed to be open to those mystical experiences, also the depth of one's faith, and ponder those kinds of big questions, like where did this all come from, knowing full well that the answer will probably never come, but it's still okay to meditate and process, at least what you feel inside about that. And I also use the word mystic because it connects to mystery, because of where I also believe in oneness, which is, I think people hear it, but it's a hard notion to get around. But it's very simple. It's like for folks like me who believe in oneness, is that this is one reality, and that if at every nanosecond, everything is absolute throughout the universe at this very moment, right? Everything is real every single nanosecond, right? It just is what it is. And we're all in the same moment in whatever form at any time. And so it's a shared experience. No one is, exempt from it. And this is a shared reality. Mm-hmm. And for me, I cannot not at that point, I can't be an atheist. That to me is so mind-blowing. But it's real if you process what I said. And I'll say it one more time. If stop that every moment throughout the universe, now adjusting for time here and there, like the space-time thing, but every moment is a shared moment throughout all of the universe.
All right. That's cool. I mean, it's honestly, it's all all the evidence can prove. Right. I can only prove that this moment existed. I can't prove that the last moment existed.
That's correct.
It's only in my memory, which is just chemical storage in my brain.
Correct. And so for you folks that are like, oh my God, he just went really woo-woo there for a moment. Hopefully you enjoyed my woo-woo moment, but that's how I think. And I could never have gotten to this point, as some of you might think I'm crazy or really enlightened, one or the other, or somewhere in between, without going through the deconstruction and reconstruction process. Because in the existing religious network that we have in the institutions, they don't talk a lot about that, from that point of view, because there's no dogma, there's no doctrine, there's no scriptures, there's nothing to describe it. It simply is. It's just a thought that every moment is just this combined, shared, total reality that takes place. And that, now I'll take it one step further. This is why I can connect to the notion of a cosmic Christ. And, I have very personal opinions of what I think the Christ is. And a lot of them really don't mesh up real well with the Bible. So I'll just leave it at that. But I think that's the power of that narrative, because I do call myself a follower of Christ. Therefore, I am a Christian because of that cosmic level, because we share this experience. He is one of us. We are one of him. There is no separation. This is all a part of that, and that is a part about the divine being. Again, I got there only because I've done all this deconstruction and reconstruction.
That is so cool. I mean, it's so cool to be able to... I mean, I can tell how excited you are about it, which is, to to have that experience and to be refreshed by that experience.
Absolutely.
And, as you're talking, there's part of me that's like, as a former evangelical Christian, I should be really like resistant to this, but I'm not. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a whole new cool way of looking at things. And, I'm going to give that some thought. What I think happens particularly in the, I'm not going to name any particular denomination. I'm going to say like in the Western church or even in the Western Christendom, there's an element that's taken from, I think it has its origins in Greek philosophy, but it kind of permeates through the work of the Apostle Paul and some of the other Bible writers, is the separation of body and spirit. That sort of says like the body is bad. The body has desires, the body rots, the body does screwy things, and the spirit is this pure thing, and eventually like our spirit's going to jump out. And I think that there are things in the New Testament that counter that idea, the fact that Jesus came back in a body. Like he was sitting on the beach grilling fish with the guys after his death. We talk about glorified bodies, and creation, and it's embodied.
Right.
But I say all that to say that the Western church is resistant to trusting your feelings because of that, because the body's bad. So if you feel something, is it lust? Is it gluttony? Is it
one of the 7 deadly sins?
Yeah, and that there's this kind of mistrust of our feelings and mistrust of mysticism. That the other day I was in theology class and we were talking about Hildegard of Hildegard von Bingen, and kind of contrasting her with Thomas Aquinas. Yeah. And a lot of her theology came from her mystical experiences.
Absolutely.
And it kind of drives some people nuts. Like it would drive somebody like Aquinas nuts because he's like, where's the scripture that supports that? Well, there isn't one because I had
this experience, yes.
And I can see the Western church going, well, you can kind of make up your own reality then, that I've seen in like charismatic churches where people like start prophesying in tongues. And somebody's like, wait a minute, you can't be writing new scripture. You can't be having new experiences. But
who says this though? That's the thing that kills me. It's like, don't tell me I can and cannot do something.
But I mean, you do need to be wary though if somebody comes along and is like, well, God told me that he wants you to do this. And it's like, well, you show me the written note from God and then I will do that thing.
That's true. Okay, that's where I draw a line.
It's got to line up with what your values are. But I do believe that you're supposed to have continued experiences with God. It's not just supposed to be like we go to church on Sunday and read a book and go home. That there's a relationship. That's the whole Holy Spirit.
So you bring up a good point, Kelly. The conversation is around Reconstruction.
Yes.
And so kind of bouncing around here a bit, and I love it because that's what we do so well on Radical Love Live. You bring up people who are just happy, I guess. That's my word for it, of doing their thing, going to church, and they just, they do what they do. And, so deconstruction and reconstruction are probably not for them. But I don't think you or I are suggesting that everybody has to go through it. But in our previous episode, I would say if you are going to plumb the depths of your faith, I don't know how you do that without doing it deconstructing, because we're handed traditions and doctrine, dogma, there's lots of words to use for it, theology, of course. We're handed these things and then the interpretations that go with those. That's the reason why there's all the different denominations and interpretations of such, blah, blah, blah. But those are shared in community and come from sources, and then that becomes what is the accepted norm within a particular community. To deconstruct and reconstruct is not a strictly solo process, but it's one that is probably done best by oneself. You can have conversations like what we are, and I'd like to think more and more would. Who knows, maybe there will be a community born where people now talk about their mystical experiences because, I'm sure, challenged because like, oh, yeah, you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to think that way.
Right.
I've never read that. No, preacher never said that in the pulpit on Sunday.
Right. Well, and there are communities out there. I mean, they're not as well organized, but I mean, there are a lot of people online that I think are seeking to connect, to have these kind of conversations and open things up. And, I think there are some churches that are open to them, and I think there are some churches that are definitely not. Like, if you start asking questions, you're shown the door.
Yeah.
But for me, I've had to ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about interpretation. I just wanted to bring this up. It's a silly meme that I saw online last week, but it's that 2,000 years from now, people reading our emails or our text messages will not know the difference between a butt dial and a booty call.
Okay.
The words are that similar, and 2,000 years from now, they're not going to know any of the context for that. But they mean very different things. Now, we're going back and we're finding like shards of papyrus and trying to piece together something that's written in Greek, translated from Aramaic, and trying to pinpoint the exact meaning of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we go in there a little more humbly than that. Be like, maybe there's some context that we need to know.
Wow. That's a great context too. Right.
Yeah.
2,000 years from now, our children's children will, I don't know if that's even enough children's there, generations. They will, but they won't know the difference between a butt dial and a booty call.
Yeah. So, these things are, there are entire denominations that live or die based on whether it's the or and, or, something like that.
Whether it's a butt dial or a booty call.
That's right.
So
thou shalt not.
Yeah, I love that. So in this conversation, it's framed around Reconstruction. Don't think that. Let me speak for myself. Kelly can speak for himself. I don't have any particular answers. So if you're thinking, I'm going to say Reconstruction is. I'm not. I mean, other than what I could pull up on the Googles and find, on Merriam-Webster or on the on Oxford Dictionary of what they define Reconstruction. It's assembling the pieces back together. That's what it is. And, as I said earlier in the episode, for me personally, even in this conversation, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, for me, it was a both and. It's not. I don't think I had a moment where I was like, okay, well, I'm done with deconstruction. Now I'm in Reconstruction mode. They were taking place simultaneously. But, now that I can process it and put words and context to it, I see it for what it is. And I'm still deconstructing and I'm still reconstructing. And that's what I enjoy because it allows me to, be even more in touch with my human experience as I'm experiencing it. Ask, those kinds of questions that, so what's purpose and what's value of our existence here? What's out there? Why are we all here? What's next? I have no idea. And actually, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, what I perform, I suppose. Or not. Maybe it'll just all end. I don't worry about that either. And that's part of the deconstruction, reconstruction that was most important. One of the most important elements for me is I've gotten to the point that I'm okay that, my life as I know it could very well end at any moment. Like I walked right in front of a Porsche earlier today on this way and almost got hit because I didn't look the other way. I thought it was on one-way street. Now, thankfully, the guy stopped in time. He yelled at me, but point is he could have killed me today.
Oh, thank God he didn't.
And thank God, so I could be here to record with Kelly and share this episode. My point being is, it's going to end someday, and I'm not worried what happens next. Like, I don't know, and I don't find any comfort of thinking that I do know. In fact, I find that really, I just simply don't connect there. So because I don't connect there, I don't worry about it, and I just live for the moment, deconstructing, reconstructing, and I live with a simple, maybe it's very childlike way of thinking, but this world would be better if we could learn how to love one another, see each other as divine beings, as what we are, and find that our priorities are not about money and other things that we're so caught up in just being human beings in our current culture that I'm hopeful for the future that they will see this. And we're starting to see little glimmers of that. So I actually look to the future and think that, even though they might see some messed up things, and we got a lot of dark time, I think, probably for us as we continue to evolve as humans. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe I'll get to enjoy that in some form. I don't know, so.
I think of effective belief, at least for me, because I can only speak for me, as a balance of tensions. And the metaphor that I would think of is a couple weeks ago, I played my guitar and sang in front of my church, and it was I hit a lot of wrong notes. There were people afterwards being like, "That was very brave."
Wow, that's a backhanded compliment if I've ever heard.
You have a beautiful voice. Like, okay, yeah. But anyway, beforehand, I was restringing my guitar, trying to get everything right.
Yeah.
If you don't know a lot about guitar, you look at it. It looks like a pretty solid thing. Like it's like a solid monolithic thing that's got some strings on it. When you start taking it apart and changing the strings and looking at it, you realize that it's really not, because the bridge has springs behind it that hold it at a certain tension, and even the tuning knobs, because I tried to tighten them and broke them, and it hold a certain
Is this
tension.
your Fabulous guitar that you had made for you?
No, that's still,
okay.
Yeah, that doesn't leave the house.
Okay. Wow.
No, this is a Telecaster that I got a couple years ago for fun. But even the wood itself bends and has to have a certain tension, and you have to have all the different parts working together in order to make the right sound. And there's a lot of things you can mess up in there too.
Sure.
To get it wrong, but there's a lot of adjustments you can make as well. And I say that because at one point, when I was a kid, I thought of faith as very much institutional. That there's a book, there's a building. This is the authority that you follow, and you don't go off on your own. And then later, when I was kind of in my deconstructing period, I went to the complete opposite end, and I was like, you have to go out on your own. Screw the authority. Screw the book. Do what feels right.
Yeah.
And neither of those extremes works on its own. That I find that, even if one leaves institution, it's still important to kind of have community.
Yeah.
To have some kind of basis of values, some kind of guardrails, some kind of check-ins, but that there also has to be independence, and it can't all just be like blind obedience, and that it's got to be able to evolve. So all of those tensions are working together to create something that's balanced, that it's not, we have to nail down exactly the right institution, or we have to be constantly firebranding on our own and going out there, but a balance between the two, and the kind of recycling and constantly checking back in.
Great analogy to the guitar, and something for anybody that's like me that's listening. I had never thought of a musical instrument being that, but that is. You're absolutely right, because all of those pieces must work together in order for it to make noise, and hopefully good noise, and not all clunkers. Or there may be some, whatever.
Well, practice.
Yeah, it's practice. Yeah. That's where
I
where
will
good
make
practice.
it come back.
And I think that's the beauty of reconstruction. Is as you were putting the strings and like trying to rebalance the guitar or the instrument itself so it made beautiful noise. It can't be an either or. It's a both and it's how do those all those different elements integrate. Which I'm a believer that living an integrated life is what I do. I don't use that a lot, but I do. I have balance, and of course I can go off on the deep end in a variety of different ways. That's called being human, but I have a good center balance. I can return there, and that's where, I'm in balance with everything, right? So, but I could not have done that if it had not been for the deconstruction and reconstruction that I've been going through for a number of years. And that's the other thing, I guess, if there's a message in all of this, is that it's not It's not one size fits all. It's not prescriptive. It's going to be your own personal journey, and it's not going to be like what I have or what Kelly has or anybody else. I mean, that's just the way it goes in deconstruction or reconstruction. It's your own personal experience. But out of my reconstruction, I created my framework of faith. That if anybody wants to see it, it's out there on my website at markdelcom.com. There's a link right there that says Framework of Faith. Go click it, and you'll see what I created over the last 10, 11 years. And it's just a lot of my writings. It's quotes from people that I identify with, the current and past. And there's some of my photography in there, and there's poetry in there. And there's my lamentations are in there about how things I don't like in our world and why it bothers me. There are all those, and so it's even, I don't use this word very often, but I would call it my personal Bible, but because it really is. But I call it Framework of Faith because that's my faith in there. But I created that because of the deconstruction and reconstruction process, and I think it's I'm not that I'm looking for a reward. But I did get one, and that balance that I have, and my worldview and perspective, and and why I do what I do with this and other things. It all happens for that reason. So,
I like the approach of, communicating with others about faith by being vulnerable and sharing our beliefs rather than being forceful and saying this is what you should believe. I think there are two different approaches.
Oof. Yeah.
While we're talking about our sharing on my website kellywilson.com, there's the story of my deconstruction is on there. It's called Modern Revelation. And I also have a blog that I started playing with called How I Kept the Faith, which is like piecemeal, sort of like building a theology. I'm not sure what direction it's going, but if people want to check it out and maybe send me a note if what you think about that work. But I just say all that to say, I appreciate a lot of the voices that I hear out there, these kind of like post-Christian or like reconstructed Christian or evangelical or progressive Christian voices or voices outside of Christianity. I don't want to be so biased to say, the culture that I was born into is the one that everybody has to be referenced to. Like all these faith voices sharing their beliefs so that we can have communication with each other rather than just listening to single voices and being told what to do.
Yeah, I agree. Oh boy, this leads into another episode itself. Is the church going to die or not? Well, first of all, you have to define what is the church. To me, it's the where two or more people gather to have these kinds of conversations. That's church to me. So, is that going to die? No. Is Christianity going to die? No, because the Christ story, the narrative, is so powerful that it's one that. Okay, it may be flawed in some places, and for those folks that think it's complete hokum, okay, I guess. I mean, it's it depends on how far you want to take it. The point I'm getting or trying to get to though is that no, it's not. But it's not going to die. It's going to evolve, and I think we are very quickly realizing what's been going on, probably for at least the last 50, 60, 70, 100 years, where a lot of people have really started to, it's been going on since day one, because, there are people that would be heretics and burned at the stake for doing what I am definitely doing. If I would have done this in a different time, I definitely would have been lit up for this, literally. But in today's age, though, what we are hearing told to us doesn't resonate because it doesn't feel intuitive, and that's we're learning to feel and to actually, what does that experience feel? I keep using the word, but what does it feel inside? And especially with faith, and then building communities where we share these experiences and be mindful of the Christ story, and however you want to interpret it. Like to me, I think, okay, it was a guy and you did some pretty awesome stuff, and as far as going around and talking about how we should be good to people and pissing off the Pharisees, and enough to where he got himself put up a situation, got him killed. So because he started challenging authority. So and that's, by the way, that's my basis of why I'm a follower of Christ. We could go on about, his resurrection and everything else. Just the fact that there's a story about this guy who was so emboldened and so passionate about his beliefs that we are all divine and that we're all equal, and that we as humans will never evolve and never be anything more until we get to the ability to see that and to call out the power brokers who use that to wield over others and diminish and be in cahoots with, like in this case, the Roman Empire, just to keep their existence going. He's like, yeah, no, I'm going to call you all out on that, and there's a better way. That's a pretty cool story, actually. So, yeah.
And when you read about this kind of like counter empire that he talks about, when you read about the kingdom, which it's a completely different theology than the kind of, I only came to die for your individual sins. It really does open one up to a new way of looking at the world, and a way that we can live with one another.
So maybe that's another episode as well.
Sure.
Okay.
You bet.
So, Kelly, I think we've come to the conclusion of this particular episode. Any parting thoughts on resurrection?
Do we solve it all?
Yeah, I don't know, folks. You can email us. Go to Radical Love .live, or you can also go to radicallovelive.com. It'll get to us one way or another, and let us know if we solved all or whatever. So with that, Kelly, do you have any parting thoughts?
I just thank you for a great conversation, for being so open and honest and vulnerable, and coming back to do this every week. I really enjoy having these conversations with you.
Likewise, Kelly. Thank you very much. Folks, again, we appreciate your support by listening to our website, or listening to our podcast. Check us out on our website at radicallove.live or radicallovelive.com. I can't even say it anymore. You can also find me on my own website, markdilcom.com, and Kelly. Where can they find you?
KellyWilson.com.
All right, it's pretty easy stuff. So, all right, so we'll be back next week. Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening to this episode of Radical Love Live, co-hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson. All rights reserved. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and other popular podcast platforms. Go to radicallovelive.com to learn more about us, watch recordings of our live events, and listen to our podcast. We also invite you to check out what Kelly and Mark are doing by going to our websites. Find Kelly at kellywilson.com and Mark at markdilcom.com. This is Radical Love Live, where we explore faith outside the boxes.